So not long ago, I made a video talking about tips on how to reduce the arrow flick when shooting with a finger draw. Now, some of you might think, well, I should thumb draw on the other side, therefore I don't have this problem. That's true, but you also have another problem, and that is the arrow flick at full draw going up like that. Now, this may not be something which pops up right away. While the finger flick does happen to beginners, I find many people shoot thumb draw, won't make this mistake, but it creeps in without you realizing it. So your normal shooting might be fairly straightforward, but every now and then, when you're not paying attention, you get this frustrating moment where you're pulling it back and just keeps on going off the arrow path. You come again, and it comes off, you pull back, comes off again, and it gets worse and worse. So you are not immune to the arrow flick, and it is caused by a similar reason to do with what's happening with your drawing hand. So here's what's happening. When you are holding the string with your thumb and your thumb ring, if you're using one, then there are a couple of things. Firstly, there might be excess contact with the thumb or thumb ring itself. So when you pull it back, this may actually be touching it and knocking the arrow and moving it up or down, especially if you're not using a knocking point, but it may be causing pressure upwards. The second thing is also excessive pressure with the index finger, because normally the index finger does press against the shaft, but if you press too much, you end up causing another upward motion with your finger. So you're knocking up that way. So if you're putting too much force upwards rather than sideways, then that will induce the flick. The third thing is also the angle of your wrist as you draw. So when you draw it back, if it's straight, then it comes back straight. But if you bend your wrist or change your elbow position, what happens is you draw and you start pulling upwards instead. So at proper draw, you might go like that. You can see my hand, it's moving upwards. So my clench is not exactly straight, it goes up. I keep it straight, stay straight. If I move it, it goes up. And that problem is exacerbated if you have, again, too much pressure on the arrow shaft. So if I maintain low pressure or no pressure, then as I draw it back, again, there's very little movement. But if I squeeze it, then it's going to move with my hand as I pull back and experience a lot more strain. Another sign of excessive pressure is if you actually end up bending the arrow at full draw. So you don't normally see this in your field of vision, but someone else watching you might observe that at full draw, when you pull it back, if there's so much pressure, you'll see, if you look downwards, I can see it in the corner of my eye actually, at your full draw, you might notice that your shaft is actually bending inwards, and that's especially if you're using, say, a string twist technique where you're putting a lot of torque on the string and putting a lot of pressure on your index finger against the shaft. So what happens there is if you are putting pressure on the back end and it's way too much, the shaft may actually be bent at full draw. Obviously, that is undesirable. You don't want to have that much contact, that much pressure, because that will influence the shot as it goes out. As a bonus, if you're having this problem where you are flicking the arrow off as you're knocking, so you knock and then it comes off like that, then the key here is to stop squeezing with this finger. We often hold the arrow between our fingers as we knock, and that's normally fine. But if you are knocking it and you are squeezing it here with these two fingers, then you may find that as you knock, you end up doing that. So just be wary of what you're doing with this hand when you're knocking the arrow. So those are the things which might help mitigate the problem if you're having it of flicking the arrow, especially at full draw. Number one, just give some spacing for the thumb and thumb ring. Number two, avoid pressure on the shaft. And number 3, do be wary of the straightness of your drawing hand. If there's too much angle, it may cause and induce an upward motion like that. Hopefully that helps. Thank you all for watching. Do stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you next time.